Welcome back to the Paddle Sports Lifestyle. I've been doing my best to document my training as a new paddler who will tackle the MR340, a 340-mile kayak race across the state of Missouri this August. I started paddling in April and have just 4 short months to learn everything required to make it across the state of Missouri by kayak in 4 days. In the last episode, I told you about our first 50-mile river run. And if that had been race week, I would have been out at that first checkpoint because I could not paddle fast enough to beat the Reaper. And remember, the Reaper boat is like a sweeper boat that gets to a certain checkpoint at designated times. And if you can't beat the Reaper, you can't progress in the race. Although I didn't beat Reaper time, I wasn't too discouraged after our training run because I knew I had something special coming up 2 weeks later. And that was a lesson with Robert Norman of K2N Online Paddling School, and I had full faith that he would teach me some things that would make me faster. Robert is based out of Florida with K2N Online Paddling School, and he came to Kansas City to participate in 2 of our local events and then to teach some lessons while he was here. And I'll tell you more about these events in some upcoming episodes, but we have here something called the Hump Day 5K, which is an informal race out at Shawnee Mission Park, where all the racer type people meet on Wednesday nights to go through a 5K course just to see if you can beat your own previous best time. And then the other thing he was coming here for was the shootout race, which was the following Saturday. So I took my lesson. I met him out at Lake Jacomo. My lesson was amazing. Long story short, I added at minimum a half a mile per hour to my speed immediately. Like the minute the lesson was over, I went out into the lake, started paddling myself, and easily added a half a mile per hour, which is huge when that's about the distance, the amount that I was short on beating Reaper time. So I was ecstatic after my lesson because I knew that if that's how much speed I got immediately, that it would just continue to improve. But that was exciting. But more importantly, he gave me some tips that helped me change my form enough that my arms are no longer getting tired as fast as they were. So it used to be I would start to try to get to that 3.5, 4 miles an hour in my kayak on a lake, and my arms would just get so tired. They would feel so heavy and my speed would drop. Now that is not the case. So that's super exciting. And I know with time, it's just going to keep getting better and better because I am still so new. That was my first exposure to somebody really taking time to help me with my form. And so it's only going to get better from here. So I got my boat into the water at Sailboat Cove on Lake Jacomo, and he stood on the dock. And then he took one video of me paddling past the dock, and then he had me come to shore to see the video and to explain the form changes he wanted me to make. And then when I got back on the water, he would just keep telling me small adjustments and different things to think about each time I went past him on the dock. And a lot of this reminded me of exactly what it was like working with a swimming coach, setting up the catch, learning how to rotate, waiting for that glide on top of the water. So that part was familiar, and it helped it make sense and kind of cement more in my brain. The biggest reason my arms were fatiguing so quickly was because I was still using too much of my arms and was not relying enough on my rotation. And I knew you had to rotate, but nobody had yet said anything to me that made enough sense for me to be able to make that adjustment or for it to seem necessary to make that adjustment. I mean, I am just starting out. And so at the very beginning of the season, my whole thought process was, let's just get on the water as often as I can because I have to learn how to actually paddle and just feel comfortable in the boat. And so I was doing a lot of that. But going on a lake in a slow pace is not the same as racing. You don't even need the same skills as far as rotating your body. Your arms aren't going to get as tired. It's just, I mean, you should learn how to paddle properly, but it's just not as necessary. It's like I always said about a 5K. You can run a 5K with poor form, but if you keep that poor form and are training for a marathon, eventually the flaws in your form are going to show up and they will result in an injury. So this is kind of the same thing like that. Now, when I set up my paddle entry, I imagine my paddle as a spear that I'm going to plunge into the water right at the front of my cockpit, right next to my boat. And as my paddle hits the water, my foot presses hard against the footboard like I'm pedaling a bike. And that helps my body rotate, provides more power, and takes the work out of my arms and puts it into my core muscles instead. And in my next story, this is going to be an important point. After my lesson, I went out on the lake to practice what I learned because I wanted it cemented in my head. I wanted it cemented in my mind. I knew that I had a race, my first official kayak race, the shootout race, which would be in 2 days. And so I wanted to be able to use these skills in that race. So I wanted a little bit, as much muscle memory as I could get going into that race. So now I was really looking forward to the shootout because I was ready to put my new skills to the test. In this next episode, I'm going to tell you about the shootout, tell you why I almost quit, and just oh man, you guys, I panicked. I panicked big time. So we're going to talk about that. And until then, wherever life takes you this summer, make it an epic adventure. Catch you next time.